Megillah HaYehudim. Learning about what had the Jews commenced, what had they finished, what they had accepted. Gemara tells us that when it talks about in the Megillah that they accepted upon themselves what they had started to do, it's talking about Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. Why is Purim the time when we finish the acceptance of the Torah? At the time of the giving of the Torah, we're at a great spiritual height, or great physical heights, as in we're finally free, like nothing can hold us down in anything, and great revelations. Purim is the opposite of that. We're in exile, we're in physical danger. Why is it the time that we complete the giving of the Torah? As this Maamar is based on the Friedrich Rebbe's Maamar, the Friedrich Rebbe tells us because at Purim they displayed Mesiras Nefesh. They had actual sacrifice for Torah. Not just that, they studied Torah in public, and no one even considered abandoning, God forbid, Judaism. And this is the distinctness of Purim. Moreover, Mordechai, who was the Moshe Rabbeinu of his generation, brought this out of the people. He taught Torah to children in public, specifically 22,000 students. Then we have the whole thing. Examples of how they got raised up to this level, that when Haman came for Mordechai, and he tells the students to run, the children to run, they say no. They're going to risk themselves for Mordechai. This is the level they've been brought to. So what's distinct about Purim? They displayed actual Mesiras Nefesh. So that's the recap of the Friedrich Rebbe's Maamar. We have 4 questions on this Maamar. 1, why is there a focus on Mordechai and the school children? The emphasis is supposed to be they had Mesiras Nefesh. These seem to be other details. That's not part of the main focus. Another question is, why are we comparing the physical state? Torah isn't a whole spiritual endeavor. So yes, it makes sense. But why the physical state? The other one we want to know, and this we saw a lot of text with, that Mesiras Nefesh, the self-sacrifice, that's only one mitzvah of the Torah. And if anything, there's a greater emphasis of living by the mitzvahs, not dying for the mitzvahs. We're supposed to live for them. V'chai behem, that's where the sages rely upon about all the times if a person is allowed to violate a mitzvah or something, whatever the need is, God forbid it should come to pass, v'chai behem, you're supposed to live by them. And not only that, but the time of the giving of the Torah, they for sure would have been willing to sacrifice themselves. But it's all no. Purim, they actually had the sacrifice. What is so distinct about that? And then also Purim and Hanukkah are both times when the Jewish people had to risk themselves to study Torah, but we say no, it's the Mesiras Nefesh of Purim. And not just because chronologically it came first, there's something distinct about Purim. What is it about Purim that's so distinct? Then we went through the whole thing. We're focusing on this question of, well, what about the Mesiras Nefesh of Purim is so distinct that it completes the giving of the Torah? But to answer that, we have to go all the way back to figure out what even happened at the giving of the Torah. What was this whole situation? What's the purpose of the giving of the Torah? It's not just to tell us what the mitzvahs of the Torah are, because the forefathers fulfilled the mitzvahs. What else was going on during that time? That's the time of the fusion. Spiritual and physical can now merge, because until then, spiritual stayed up, physical stayed down, no crossing over. Now we have the fusion, the merger, that things in the physical world can not only be elevated, they can even be transformed into something that's holy. How can two opposites unite? Only when something greater than both unites them. So we saw the examples of, you have the two Malchachal, the angel of Michael, and Gabriel, prince of water, prince of fire, chesed, kindness, and gvura, might, strength. How do they make peace between them? Because God, or in Sof, the infinite light, overrides both of them and make peace. 2 ministers who make peace before the king. At the giving of the Torah, God's essence was revealed, so that's how you have spirituality and physicality can make peace between them. We started looking at these 3 aspects that we're applying in different areas. Tachton, the lower aspect of things, Elyon, the higher aspect of things, and Batel, subjugation, like the word of Bittel, of nullification, but that's where the merger occurred. So we had, for example, in regard to a mitzvah, Tachton, the lower approach, is that the physical aspect remains physical. So you take a parchment, you turn it into a Torah scroll, even though it's now transformed and elevated, but it's still a Torah scroll, there's still parchment there. So the physical still remains physical. Higher aspect, the Elyon, spiritual aspect of it, that still remains spiritual. But then, how do you have the Batel, the subjugation? It's when the two of them unite, the lower aspect and the higher aspect unite, fusion, the merger between the two, and that's before the revelation of God's essence. So this Torah scroll, which was just a parchment, and the holiness of what the Torah is, when you put the two together, you've now elevated, you've transformed this to now be something much higher than it was. We looked at it in regard to the fulfillment of a mitzvah, which just gets a little bit more specific. So this is what we were in the middle of looking at, the fulfillment aspect of a mitzvah. The lower aspect, which is the body, is habituated to doing a mitzvah. The body, the animal soul, we train it to do a mitzvah. It's a very physically driven approach to fulfilling the mitzvah. Elyon, the higher aspect of it, this is by desire for connection to God. It's not just the body being trained into it. The body gets compelled by the soul's love of God. The soul's love of God is the motivating factor, not just like, oh, this is habits, my body automatically does these things. The batel aspect, the subjugation aspect of it, and that's, we do the mitzvah because God commanded. So it's not about whatever habits I've been trained into. It's not about what I'm feeling. It's about going a level above both of those. And the level above both of those is, so we do as God commanded me. Not for any other reason, my body does. I give myself over to do as God commanded. It's not about whatever my emotions, my personal emotions are feeling. All of me is given over to do because so says God. So we're looking at the text of the lower aspect, things that were habituated into it. It's all from Yeshaya, a quote from the Navi, where it says it, oh, you're just doing things by rote. So not necessarily in a good way. Then we see Tanya talking about it, that you do things by rote. So yes, you're getting the mitzvah done, but you're not going to get yourself to the next level unless you've got an emotion behind it. So specifically love to drive you to go to the next level. We saw this also kind of from a different part of Tanya with the whole thing is chapter 15 of one who serves God and one who serves him not. One who serves God is someone who's actively engaged in service versus one who serves him not is just kind of at stasis kind of. The driving force behind such things is that love is going to propel us to do more. It's kind of talking about doing things by rote, but also how do you get out of doing things by rote? Or how do you get out of doing things just from habit? Looking at more, this is from Bereshis Rabbah. Remember we said Rabbah means it's the Medrash. It's filling in here about the book of Bereshis, and it's the verse is Zachar Nekeva Baram. Male and female, he created them. The verse comes from, so God created man in his image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. Remember the whole thing that we talk about, we're made in God's image. So this is the verse, Bereshis chapter 5, verse 2. Commenting on this, Rabbi Yeshua bar Nechemia, in the name of Rabbi Chanina bar Yitzchak, and the rabbis in the name of Rabbi Elazar say, he endowed him as an Adam with 4 features from the supernal realm and 4 features from the lower realm. As in 4 from the upper worlds, spiritual realms, and 4 from the lower realms, the physical realm. From the lower realm, he eats and drinks as does an animal, procreates as does an animal, excreted as an animal, and dies as does an animal. So these are 4 features of man that come from the physical realm. From the supernal realm, as in from the higher spiritual realms, he stands as do the ministering angels, speaks as do the ministering angels, has intelligence as do the ministering angels, and sees as do the ministering angels. But do animals not also see? This is bewildering. The difference is that this one, a human, has peripheral vision. You ever think about this stuff before? It's actually, you know the whole story of the golem, the Maamar of Prague made the golem? You've heard about it? What? No? Okay, when did the Maamar live? 1600s? The Maamar was a great rabbi. And the Maamar is an acronym. He was actually a great-great-grandfather of the Alter Rebbe. The Maamar of Prague. When you go to Prague, the golem is all over. So it was because of all the blood libels that were going on. Oh, the Jews kill Christian kids for their matzahs and they take blood for the matzah. Which, have you read one verse of the Torah that it tells you however many times you're not allowed to eat blood? We studied our text. Eventually, the Maamar put in a request, what am I supposed to do about these blood libels? And he had this division answer that he should create a man. So he created a golem out of clay. It was a whole thing about people who brought with him to create it and they traced it. A whole thing. So basically they create this man out of clay, just like God created man. The golem, whatever spiritual, Kabbalistic things, they created the golem, but he says, I can't give him speech. That's something that God could give man speech. I cannot give the golem speech. So the golem couldn't talk and it didn't have, I guess you could say like advanced intelligence kind of. They actually did a story tape. You might even be able to find it online. It's called The Mysterious Golem and Leonard Nimoy is one of the voices on it. So the golem used to be there to protect the Jewish people. He would intercept and foil the plots. Everyone's afraid of the golem kind of thing. Eventually, they basically put it back to rest. They say it's buried up in the Maharal Shul in Prague because it didn't go back into the ground. It was just put down, kind of. When it's like, oh, we don't need you anymore. It took away, like, the spirit that animated it or something. They had it. They had a golem. Rabbi Tifdai. The next rabbi says, in the name of Rabbi Acha, the supernal beings were created in the divine image and likeness, but do not procreate. While the earthly beings, as in the ones that were created before man was created, procreate but were not created in the divine image and likeness. The animals were not created in the divine image. Angels were created in the divine image. The one blessed be said, I will create him as an Adam in the divine image and likeness. A trait from the supernal realm, but he will procreate a trait from the earthly realm. Rabbi Tifdai said in the name of Rabbi Acha, the Holy One blessed be said, if I create him from the supernal realm, he will live and never die. If from the earthly realm, he will die and will not live. Rather, I'll create him from both, the supernal and from the earthly. If he sins, he will die. If he does not sin, he will live. Just talking about, of course, our creation being of both aspects. This is also Bereshis Rabbah, just a different section of Bereshis Rabbah. It follows along this similar theme. Everything that you see is an outgrowth of either the heavens or the earth. As it is stated in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. On the second day, he created things out of the heavenly realm. God said, let there be a firmament. Day 2 was sky. So verse says, God created the heaven and the earth. That's day 1. Day 2, God created the sky, the firmaments. On the third day, he created things out of the earthly realm. God said, let the earth sprout grass. The dry land comes forth, and the plants and all that. On the fourth day, he created things out of the heavenly realm. God said, let there be luminaries. That's when he put the sun, and the moon, and the stars into the sky. Which, new tangent, we always grew up with a heliocentric theory. So that's what I teach you in school in science. If you think about it, you believe in God, you believe in creation. How does it make sense, when it doesn't, that God would create a world, and he puts the sun at the center of the universe? Why would God do that? It doesn't make sense. If anything, if we're the purpose of all creation, we should be the center of the universe. I never thought about it until I saw the letter from the Rebbe that says everything does circle the earth. And then the more you think about it, you realize that it makes no sense for a sun to be the center of the universe. What point of creation is that? The sun and moon and stars were put into the sky to be luminaries for the earth. Us to circle around the sun? If we're the point of creation, what are we doing circling around the sun? That would seem to say that the sun is the center of everything. It's not, we are. You realize also that line of thought underlines the whole purpose and meaning of what we're doing here. You can't be purposeless, meaninglessness, if you really believe that. If we're the point of everything, then we better get on at whatever we're supposed to be doing. Back to this. On the fifth day, he created things out of the earthly realm. God said, let water swarm, all the fish and all the birds in the sky, all that stuff. On the sixth day, he came to create man. He said, if I create him from the heavenly realm, the heavenly will outnumber the earthly by one creation, and there will not be peace, equilibrium in the world. Because you have day 1, both, then you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What are we going to do about it? Because so far we're 2 and 2 for the rest of the days of the week. 2 and 4 and 3 and 5. If I create him from the earthly realm, the earthly will outnumber the heavenly by one creation and there will not be peace in the world. Rather, I create him from both the heavenly and the earthly realms for the sake of peace. That is what is written, and Havaya Elokim created man out of dust from the ground, from the earthly, and he blew into his nostrils a living spirit, the breath of life, from the heavenly. This is as Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish said, dominion or fear with him, he makes peace in his highest dominion, this is Gabriel, and fear this is Michal. We spoke about that before with Tanya, about how these two angels represent two different things, and yet they make peace on high. The Maamar is referencing this to show how the balance of the earthly and the heavenly that exists, first of all, in the whole creation of the world and within ourselves. All the texts that we did from last class and this one all goes with this idea of tacht on the lower aspect, the focus being on the physical form, as in habituating the body to do certain things. Then we'll look at the Elyon aspect. For this one in particular, we don't have something for the bottle text for it. For the Elyon aspect, the higher aspect, that's a desire to connect, motivated by the love of the soul. And here we have from Tanya, text to support this. For love is the root of a Jew's observance of all the 248 positive commands. If you remember chapter 4 of Tanya, we talk about how you only do something for someone, like you're going to go out of your way for someone out of love or fear for them. Otherwise, what's going to compel you? This connects to the idea of love of God is what's going to motivate me to do the mitzvah. For love is the root of a Jew's observance of all the 248 positive commands. From it they issue forth, and without it they have no true substance, for he who fulfills them in truth is he who loves God's name, and who truly desires to cleave to him. Now one cannot truly cleave to him except through the fulfillment of the 248 positive commandments. You love God so much, so you got to do what he asks of you. That's the 248 positive thou shouts. Thus, one's love of God and desire to cleave to him dictate that he observe the commandments. Why is it possible to cleave to God only by fulfilling the commandments? So why is it only the mitzvahs that attach us to God? If I want to give God a bouquet of flowers, why can't I do that? Why do I have to do what the mitzvahs are? For they are the 248 organs of the king, of God, king of the universe, as it were, as is explained elsewhere. We're actually going to get to this later, about the whole idea of each mitzvah representing one of the 248 limbs of a human being, which reflects God's 248 quote-unquote limbs. Hold that thought, put on the back burner. Just as each of the organs of a human being is a vessel for the particular soul power that clothes itself in it, as in the eye is a vessel for the power of sight, the ear for hearing, and so on, the eye is the correct vessel for sight, but the eye doesn't have the power of sight by itself. The soul gives it the power of sight. The soul gives the eye the power of sight because the eye is best suited to sight. It's not that the eye has sight, it just needs the soul to turn it on. The soul has to actually give it the power of sight. Same with the ears for hearing, all of our faculties, that's how it works, that the soul gives it its particular powers. It's not just an overall light switch. So is each commandment a vessel for the specific aspect of God's will, the supernal will. Each mitzvah is aligned with one of these, which clothes itself in that particular commandment. That goes also, if someone, God forbid, is sick or something like that, we want to work on the mitzvahs to make sure the channels are all open. Each commandment expresses not only the supernal will that a specific act be carried out, but also the particulars of its observance. Thus it is understood that by performing the commandments, one achieves union with God, whose will they express. So these are God's mitzvahs. This is what I want. So when we do what God wants, we unite with him, we connect with him. It follows then that love of God clothes or expresses itself in once performed of the 248 positive commandments. Mitzvahs is how you connect with God. Mitzvahs, what is a motivating factor for doing mitzvahs is love is the strongest motivating factor for mitzvahs. It is their root and life force which leads one to observe them with the totality of one's being. That's why I'm going to put all of myself into it. There's going to be vitality in the mitzvahs. They're going to be living mitzvahs and not just like, okay, here it's done. Whatevs. For when one loves God and desires to cleave to him, he'll perform his commandments as he would perform a task for a dear friend with delight and zest and with all of his being. Love of God is going to compel us not just to do the mitzvahs, but to do them with energy and with life. So, taking these three ideas, we saw two already for mitzvahs, and now we're going to see a third one, and then we're actually going to go over to Torah study. So there's three also approaches to the mitzvahs themselves. As in, tachta on the lower level, mitzvahs were given to refine man and creation. So why did God give us mitzvahs at all? Not just about how to fulfill the mitzvah, or what does a mitzvah affect in the world, but what's the philosophical approach to mitzvahs? How do we view these things? Are they just commands that God gave us, just for funsies? So, there's a lower aspect. The mitzvahs were given to refine man in creation. That is very physically world-oriented. Whatever the reason for the mitzvahs are, you guys need to do them because it's for you. It's going to make you guys better people. I think I've mentioned this before. You see letters that the Rebbe writes, and we don't always see the letter that came in, but we have copies of the letters that went out often. We have a lot of responses. Sometimes the Rebbe would say, ask for this individual that you mentioned, or something about their behaviors that don't seem to align, and it seems to imply that someone's complaining about someone who portrays themselves as being religious or traditional or something, and their behaviors are not great. And the Rebbe would, can you imagine what they're like without Torah mitzvahs? You're taking the view, how can someone who fulfills Torah mitzvahs behave like this? The Torah mitzvahs probably got them to this point. Imagine them without the Torah mitzvahs, God forbid. Now, obviously, we have to be better, but that's mitzvahs are given to refine man in creation. Then we have a higher aspect of this. Mitzvahs were given to walk in his ways and to connect with him above levels of creation. As in, why did God give us the mitzvahs? So we could be like God, basically. As God does, we could do as God does. And that way we connect to him above this physical world that we live in. One is to refine the physical world, and one is to raise ourselves above the physical world by being like God. Then we have the highest aspect, this batal aspect, the combining aspect, that mitzvahs make man significant. And they connect him to the essence of the commander. As in, kind of did this with Micha Mocha, do we exist or not? The Torah says we exist, and we exist because we fulfill fulfill Torah mitzvahs. The whole reason why we're here, what substantiates the world's existence, that the world, we don't know if the Jews are going to keep this stuff or not. We saw that in the last year. The world trembled. They don't know what's going to happen. When the Jewish people said yes, so the world was like, okay, thank God. Creation doesn't have to just fall and implode. Mitzvahs make man significant. No, we are just a bunch of floating atoms. Theoretically, you could just be another amoeba. But we're not, because we're human beings who make the choice of Torah mitzvahs. And through doing that, we connect, not just that we rise above the level of creation, but we actually connect to the essence of God, the one who gives us the mitzvahs. Lower aspect, mitzvahs refine man and creation. This is from Midrash Tanchuma, Parsha Shmini. Said the Holy One, blessed be He, guard yourselves not to defile yourselves with an impure beast and with an impure swarming creature. So this Torah portion starts off with sacrifices and they sanctify the Mishkan. The second part of this Torah portion, second part of Shmini, goes into the animals that we can eat. It goes into all the kosher stuffs. No bugs. 6 times. Pig is mentioned twice. I think once and it's repeated. Meat and milk has 3 different prohibitions. Creepy crawl is a 6 prohibitions against it. Said the Holy One, blessed be, guard yourselves not to defile yourselves with an impure beast and with an impure swarming creature. The Torah doesn't use the word not kosher. It says impure. So did King David say, as for God, his way is perfect, the word of Hashem is pure. It's relating these terms here. But one thing that they're using here is the word trufa, which we're going to see again. It's a very particular word that's being used, and it's relating different verses to that particular word. Thus, the mitzvahs were given only to purify mortals through them. So God's way is perfect. God, the word of Hashem is pure. Here it's saying mitzvahs are given to man to purify us. They said to him, Rabbi, what does the Holy One, blessed be He, care whether one ritually slaughters cattle and eats the meat, or whether one slaughters cattle by stabbing and eats it? Will some such thing benefit or harm him? What does God care how we slaughter an animal? What difference does it make? So know that this ritual slaughter was given only to purify Israel. We're going to see more on this. One thing that you're going to be able to see from this particular section, is how certain texts, they quote each other and go back to each other. Like you'll be able to see how interconnected the commentary on the Torah is from other things that we're going to see here.